I still remember that electrifying moment as if it were splashed in neon across my mind. The moment I discovered that my wife had secretly used our entire savings for a lavish trip abroad with her affair partner. In those first 100 heartbeats, every promise of security and shared dreams evaporated into bitter disbelief. The cruel shock of betrayal hit me like a tidal wave, leaving me reeling in a cocktail of humiliation, anger, and an unsettling emptiness. Yet, as I sat there in stunned silence, a fierce, defiant spark ignited within me, a spark that would soon transform my world in ways I never imagined possible. It began on an otherwise ordinary Thursday evening. I had returned home from a long day at work, exhausted but expecting the familiar warmth of our shared life. The house was quiet, the soft hum of the refrigerator and the distant murmur of traffic outside serving as the soundtrack to my routine. I decided to review our finances, a habit we'd both maintained to plan for our future, including our retirement dreams. With steady concentration, I logged into our joint account online. At first, everything appeared normal. But then, a series of large withdrawals caught my eye. My heart pounded as I clicked through transaction after transaction until the truth unfolded before me like a cruel twist in a bad movie. Every penny from our savings, painstakingly built up over the years, had been siphoned off to fund a secret trip. And it wasn't just any trip, it was a lavish escape abroad with someone I'd never met, the details of which were concealed behind layers of secrecy. In that moment, time seemed to freeze. I sat, transfixed by the screen, unable to tear my eyes away from the evidence of my wife's betrayal. The realization was devastating. Our shared dreams, our hopes for a secure future, had been sacrificed on the altar of her impulsive desire for adventure and the company of her affair partner. The savings that were meant to secure our later years, to build a life of stability and comfort, were gone. Every number confirmed the unthinkable, and with each passing second, a profound sorrow and seething anger grew within me. I felt as though the foundation of our entire life had been callously shattered, leaving behind only remnants of trust and promises unfulfilled. In the hours that followed, I wandered aimlessly through our silent home, each room a painful reminder of the future we had once envisioned together. I recalled the nights spent planning vacations, the dreams of a comfortable retirement, and the quiet confidence we once shared about building a secure life. Now, everything had been undone by a single, secret decision. A decision made without my consent and without a hint of discussion. The betrayal wasn't just about money, it was about the trust we had built over years of love and compromise, now splintered into fragments of heartbreak and anger. I spent that night in a state of numb disbelief, my mind reeling with a mixture of confusion and rage. I remembered small hints I had ignored, the furtive glances when discussing travel, the hushed phone calls late at night, and even the subtle changes in her tone when she mentioned her plans for the future. Had I been so blind to the signs that our dreams were unraveling? The thought haunted me as I lay awake in the darkness, the silence around me echoing with memories of a life that was slipping away. But even as despair threatened to engulf me, a small, defiant ember of determination began to burn within. I realized that if she could seize our shared future so recklessly, then I could still salvage my own. In the coming days, I retreated into a storm of introspection and cautious planning. Alone in my study, I pored over every financial document, every bank statement that confirmed the magnitude of her betrayal. I reread our old emails, scanned through photos of happier times, and stared at the records of our savings with a mix of sorrow and steely resolve. I was painfully aware that my world had changed irrevocably. Our future together was no longer a shared vision, but now a fragmented dream. And yet, in that devastating moment, I had also safeguarded my own future. I had secretly cashed out my share of the retirement funds long ago, a decision born of a deep-seated fear that our paths might one day diverge. Now, with the truth laid bare, that foresight became my lifeline, a small island of security in an ocean of betrayal. That realization ignited a transformation in me. I began to see that I could no longer remain shackled to a relationship that had proven so fragile and untrustworthy. The pain of the betrayal was immense, but it also offered me a choice: to continue down a path of shared delusion or to carve out a future defined solely by my own decisions and aspirations. I chose the latter. I decided that if she was willing to gamble our shared savings on a secret escapade with her affair partner, then I would reclaim my destiny by building a future that was unmistakably mine. It was not an act of revenge, but an assertion of my self-worth, a declaration that I would not be defined by the losses inflicted upon me, but by the strength I could muster in their aftermath. That night, as I sat alone in the dim glow of my study, I began drafting an action plan. I made a list of immediate steps to secure my finances and lay the groundwork for my new future. I contacted a trusted financial advisor to verify the details of my secretly cashed-out funds, and their reassuring confirmation bolstered my resolve. I also started researching new investment opportunities and housing options, small ventures that would allow me to build a home and a stable life independent of the shattered dreams we had once shared. Each plan, each calculation, was a quiet, deliberate act of self-affirmation, a promise that I would rise from the ashes of our broken partnership. In that solitary, heart-wrenching moment, I made a vow to myself: I would choose me. I would rebuild my life piece by piece, not as a shadow of the person I once was, but as a stronger, wiser, and more self-assured individual. The betrayal that had once seemed like an insurmountable blow would become the catalyst for my greatest transformation, a journey of healing, of reinvention, and ultimately, of reclaiming every lost dream. As I closed my journal that night, I felt both the sorrow of what was lost and a budding hope for what was to come. I was ready to step into the future on my own terms, to build a life that celebrated my resilience and honored the lessons learned from heartbreak. In the days that followed that crushing revelation, I embarked on a relentless journey of transformation, a journey that took me deep into the labyrinth of my own emotions and into the hard-edged world of financial and personal reinvention. Every morning, I rose before the sun, lacing up my running shoes and hitting the silent streets of my neighborhood. The cool dawn air cleared my mind as I pounded the pavement, each step a quiet vow to reclaim what I had lost. With every run, the pain of betrayal, the sting of watching our shared future crumble, slowly gave way to a fierce determination to rebuild my life on my own terms. I refused to let the memory of that fateful evening, when I discovered our savings had been drained for a dream trip, define me. Instead, I resolved to transform the betrayal into the fuel that would drive me forward. Back at home, my small apartment turned into a war room of plans and possibilities. I spent long, sleepless nights poring over every bank statement and legal document, meticulously verifying that every cent had indeed been taken. With trembling hands, I confirmed the numbers, each transaction a brutal reminder of what we had lost. But even as the initial shock subsided into a deep, seething grief, a spark of resolve began to grow. I realized that while she had gambled our savings on a fleeting fantasy, I had secretly safeguarded my own future. I had cashed out my share long before she could act, a decision born out of a lingering fear that our shared dreams might one day vanish. That secret move, painful as it was, had become my lifeline, a small island of security amid the tidal wave of betrayal. Determined to reclaim control, I began charting a new course for my life. I made a detailed list of my goals, both personal and professional, that reflected the life I wanted to create on my own. I scribbled down ideas for new investments, for a modest home I could call my own, and for the projects I had long abandoned in the hope that our future would always be secure together. I delved into financial planning with a zeal I never knew I possessed, setting up meetings with trusted advisors and legal experts who confirmed that my preemptive cash-out had indeed protected my assets. Every conversation, every piece of advice, reinforced a growing conviction: I was ready to build a future that was entirely mine. At the same time, I was forced to confront the emotional wreckage left in the wake of her impulsive decision. In the quiet solitude of my study, I began writing fervently in a new journal, a blank slate on which I could pour my raw, unfiltered thoughts. I wrote about the searing shock of seeing our savings vanish, the relentless ache of betrayal, and the slow, painful process of realizing that our dreams were no longer shared but shattered. Each entry was a cathartic release, a step toward understanding that while the pain was immense, it could also be the seed for a new beginning. I recorded every tear and every moment of insight, gradually piecing together a narrative of resilience that started with heartbreak and was now steering me toward empowerment. The transformation wasn't instantaneous. It was a long, arduous process marked by setbacks and breakthroughs. There were days when I felt overwhelmed by a wave of anger and despair, when the betrayal seemed too vast to overcome. On those days, I would retreat to the quiet of the early morning, let my emotions flow as I ran, and then return home to reflect on the progress I had made. I recalled conversations with old friends who reminded me that I had always been more than just a partner in a shared life. I was an individual with dreams and talents that deserved recognition. Their gentle reassurances became a vital source of strength, a reminder that even in our darkest moments, we can find the courage to rise again. At work, I transformed my professional focus into a series of strategic moves designed to elevate my small business. I immersed myself in learning, reading voraciously about market trends, attending seminars on entrepreneurship, and even enrolling in a short course on digital marketing to expand my reach. I poured my energy into refining our business model, developing new product ideas, and optimizing every process to ensure that the enterprise I had built was not only viable but positioned for growth. I set up weekly meetings with a small team of colleagues who shared my vision, and together we brainstormed relentlessly. We discussed ideas until our voices grew hoarse, debated strategies over countless cups of coffee, and celebrated each minor success as a victory over the earlier humiliation. Every contract secured, every investor call that ended with encouraging words, was a brick laid in the new foundation of my self-made future. One particular week stands out in my memory, a week of relentless challenges that tested every ounce of my resolve. A major client, whose account was critical to our business's survival, raised serious concerns about our current strategies. The pressure was intense. I spent days in meetings, negotiating, revising proposals, and reworking our approach until I finally secured the client's trust. That victory wasn't just a professional win, it was a profound personal affirmation that I was capable of surmounting even the most daunting obstacles. Every time I recalled that grueling week, I felt a surge of pride. I had taken the humiliation of being dismissed at a work dinner and channeled it into a triumph that reverberated through every corner of my life. Outside of the professional sphere, I sought to rebuild my social connections with renewed authenticity. I reached out to friends I had lost touch with, those who had known me before the betrayals and the public dismissals. I organized small get-togethers where we could talk, laugh, and share memories unburdened by pretense. In these intimate gatherings, the conversations were raw and honest. I listened to stories of their own struggles and shared my journey of overcoming loss and rediscovering my self-worth. With each heartfelt conversation, I felt a deep sense of connection and a reminder that my true value was recognized by those who mattered. Their support was like a lifeline, pulling me out of the abyss of isolation and reaffirming that my future was full of promise. At the same time, I began to explore new hobbies that would help me reconnect with my creative self. I returned to painting, allowing the colors and textures on the canvas to express the tumult of my emotions, a visual language of pain and resilience. I even took up writing, not just in my private journal but for an online blog where I could share my experiences with a wider audience. The act of writing, of articulating my journey in my own words, was profoundly liberating. It gave me a voice, a way to transform the raw anguish of betrayal into a narrative of hope and renewal. The blog slowly gained a modest following, and reading the supportive comments from strangers who had faced similar heartbreak made me realize that my pain, when shared, could become a source of healing for others. Throughout this transformative period, I maintained a rigorous routine that balanced professional ambition, personal healing, and the cultivation of new dreams. Mornings were dedicated to physical renewal, running, stretching, and meditating in the soft light of dawn. Afternoons were reserved for work, deep dives into business strategy, and meetings that stretched my intellect and resolve. Evenings became a time for reflection, quiet moments with a book, long walks in the park, and hours spent writing in my journal, piecing together the mosaic of my new life. Every part of my day was a deliberate act of rebuilding, a silent defiance against the bitterness that had once threatened to consume me. I also sought to understand the emotional underpinnings of the betrayal. I met with a therapist who specialized in relationship trauma, and over countless sessions, I unraveled the complex emotions that had clouded my vision. I learned that betrayal, as excruciating as it is, can serve as a powerful impetus for growth. My therapist helped me see that my worth was not diminished by someone else's selfish choices, but rather, it was affirmed by the very act of choosing to rise above the pain. With each session, I shed layers of doubt and learned to rebuild my self-esteem from within. I embraced the idea that the journey toward healing was not about forgetting the past, but about transforming it into wisdom, a roadmap for a future where I was the master of my own destiny. As I immersed myself in this process of reinvention, I began to see the beginnings of a new reality take shape. My small business started to show signs of growth as I implemented innovative strategies and forged new partnerships. I received encouraging feedback from clients and colleagues alike, and each positive review served as a quiet, resounding victory against the dismissive labels of the past. My financial situation, once marred by the shock of my wife's betrayal, began to stabilize and even flourish. I made prudent investments, diversified my portfolio, and discovered new avenues for income that promised a secure, independent future. Every financial success was a reaffirmation that my secret preparations had been wise, that while she had gambled away our shared savings, I had safeguarded my future. In this period of intense transformation, I also allowed myself to dream again, dreams that were entirely my own, unencumbered by the illusions of a failed partnership. I envisioned a life where I could travel freely, pursue creative projects, and build a home that reflected my unique vision. I began researching potential locations, visiting neighborhoods with a sense of cautious optimism, and even meeting with architects who could help me turn my ideas into reality. Each new possibility was a reminder that the future was not a fixed path, but an open horizon waiting to be explored. I started to see my life as a canvas, every decision a brushstroke that would paint a picture of independence, resilience, and unyielding self-belief. The more I invested in myself, the more I realized that the journey from betrayal to empowerment was not linear but a winding road of challenges and breakthroughs. There were days when the memories of that fateful dinner would surge up unexpectedly. A familiar tone in a conversation, a stray comment in passing, a sudden flash of a moment that left me momentarily vulnerable. In those moments I would pause, take a deep breath, and return to the practices that had sustained me, my early morning runs, my journal, and the comforting rituals of solitude. I learned that vulnerability was not a weakness but a necessary ingredient in the recipe for personal growth. It was through embracing my own imperfections and acknowledging the pain that I found the strength to move forward with renewed determination. Every step I took was a declaration that I would no longer allow my identity to be defined by someone else's shallow judgment. I began to share my story more openly at small gatherings, where the supportive murmurs of understanding and shared experiences affirmed that I was not alone. In these intimate settings, I recounted my journey with raw honesty, the shock of discovering our savings, the searing pain of betrayal, and the gradual, deliberate steps I had taken to reclaim my future. The outpouring of empathy and encouragement from others became a powerful reminder that my worth was not contingent on the mistakes of the past, but on the courage to build a new, independent life. By the time several months had passed, the cumulative effects of my efforts were undeniable. My business was growing steadily, bolstered by new contracts and an expanding network of partners. My financial security, meticulously rebuilt through smart investments and careful planning, provided a sturdy foundation for the future I was now envisioning. I had carved out a life that was both resilient and vibrant, a life where I could finally stand tall, free from the betrayal that had once threatened to crush me. Every challenge I overcame, every moment of doubt I silenced, was a stepping stone that led me closer to a future defined by my own dreams and ambitions. As I reflect on this period of transformation, I realize that the journey was as much about rebuilding my external world as it was about healing my inner self. The pain of betrayal, while never entirely erased, had become a powerful catalyst for growth. I learned to view every setback as a lesson, every harsh word as a spark that fueled my determination. My journal, filled with the raw, unedited truth of my journey, became a sacred record of my evolution, a chronicle of how I turned heartbreak into the bedrock of a new beginning. Now, as I stand on the threshold of the next phase of my life, I feel a deep, abiding sense of empowerment. I have reclaimed my identity, rebuilt my finances, and forged a future that is unequivocally my own. The echoes of that humiliating dinner have faded into distant memories, replaced by the steady pulse of self-belief and the promise of endless possibility. Every hard-fought victory at work, every quiet moment of introspection, every supportive conversation with a friend has woven together a tapestry of resilience that now defines me. I remember the moment of final reckoning as if it were a scene from an epic drama. A day when the full weight of betrayal and the cold calculus of revenge merged with an unexpected clarity about who I truly was. In the weeks that followed the discovery that my wife had used our hard-earned savings for a secret trip with her affair partner, my world had been turned upside down. I spent long, sleepless nights haunted by the images of empty bank accounts and shattered promises. But slowly, amid the chaos of heartbreak and loss, a steely resolve began to crystallize. I realized that if someone could so recklessly gamble away our future, then I could rebuild mine. And more than that, I could transform the wreckage of our shared life into a monument of my own strength. I began by taking control of every facet of my existence that had been tainted by her betrayal. The first decisive act was to sell all of her belongings, items that she had collected over the years as tokens of a life we were supposed to share. Every watch, every piece of jewelry, even the furniture that once filled our home with memories, none of it could remain a reminder of her deceit. I spent days meticulously cataloging each item, weighing its sentimental value against the harsh reality that it now represented a life built on lies. The process was both cathartic and excruciating. As I boxed up her possessions, I felt each stolen memory, each betrayal, being locked away. In that painstaking act of letting go, I was reclaiming my sense of self, asserting that I would no longer be defined by her choices. With her belongings sold and the money discreetly funneled into my own accounts, I felt a bittersweet surge of vindication. It wasn't merely about the cash, it was a symbolic severing of the ties that had once bound us. I knew that the funds I recovered would not restore our lost future, but they would serve as the seed for a new beginning. I began to invest in myself in ways I had never dared before. I attended workshops on financial literacy, read voraciously about investment strategies, and began mapping out plans to rebuild my retirement funds independently. Every financial decision I made was imbued with a newfound clarity. I was determined to secure a future that was entirely my own, a future that would shine in stark contrast to the darkness of betrayal. Yet the journey was far more than numbers and transactions. It was a profound internal metamorphosis. In the quiet moments after the storm of discovery, I sat alone in the emptiness of our once shared living room and allowed myself to feel every raw emotion. I wept for the dreams we had once nurtured together, for the love that had been so carelessly betrayed. But amid the tears, I discovered a deep, pulsing strength, a spark that told me I could be more than the sum of my losses. I began to see that every moment of pain was, paradoxically, the catalyst for my reinvention. I started a new journal, writing long, candid entries about the process of healing, about the slow, deliberate steps I was taking to rebuild my identity from the fragments of our broken life. I reflected on the choices that had led to this point and realized that I had always possessed the inner fortitude to change my destiny, if only I had the courage to embrace it. I reconnected with the person I had once been before our marriage was marred by secrets and betrayal. I reached out to old friends who remembered me as a passionate dreamer, a man with big ambitions and a kind heart. Their reminders of who I was, untainted by recent events, provided a steady source of comfort and encouragement. We met for coffee, walked through parks, and talked late into the night about our hopes and the lessons learned from life's cruel twists. In these moments of genuine connection, I began to understand that my true worth was not defined by the actions of someone who had chosen to run away with our savings. Instead, it was defined by my capacity to overcome, to learn, and to transform adversity into a launching pad for a future I would craft with my own hands. Professionally, I threw myself into my work with an intensity that was both desperate and determined. I revisited every project I had ever poured my heart into and began to implement innovative changes that had long been on the back burner. I restructured my small business, streamlined operations, and even explored new markets that promised growth. Each successful venture, every contract signed and every positive review from clients, was a small victory against the betrayal I had endured. I began to receive recognition for my innovative strategies, and colleagues who had once overlooked my contributions now sought my opinion. Every accolade, every nod of approval, built a new foundation of confidence and self-respect that was entirely mine. It wasn't about proving her wrong, it was about proving to myself that I was capable of building something extraordinary from the ruins of a shattered dream. As the months passed, the transformation of my life began to ripple outward. I expanded my professional network, attending conferences where I shared my journey with other entrepreneurs who had faced similar betrayals. In those spaces, I discovered a common thread, a network of resilient individuals who had turned heartbreak into hope. Their stories resonated with mine, and in sharing my experiences, I found that my vulnerability became a strength. I began mentoring young professionals who were grappling with their own setbacks, offering them the lessons I had painstakingly learned. Every conversation, every shared moment of encouragement, was a reminder that my journey was not isolated, but part of a larger tapestry of human resilience. I also dedicated time to nurturing my creative side, a part of me that had long been stifled by the responsibilities and disappointments of our failed partnership. I returned to painting, letting vibrant colors and bold brushstrokes become the language through which I expressed my inner turmoil and emerging hope. I took long walks in nature, capturing fleeting moments of beauty with my camera, each snapshot a testament to the simple joys that I had almost forgotten existed. These creative pursuits became a refuge, a way to channel my emotions constructively, and a source of renewal that filled the void left by the betrayal. Throughout this intense period of rebuilding, I continued to learn and grow through self-education. I devoured books on personal development, leadership, and financial independence, each page reinforcing the belief that I was the architect of my own destiny. I attended seminars and workshops, where I absorbed the wisdom of those who had turned their own hardships into success. This constant influx of knowledge and inspiration not only sharpened my skills but also fortified my resolve. I learned to see every setback as a lesson, every harsh word as a spark that ignited a new idea, and every moment of doubt as a challenge to prove my worth. Slowly but surely, the fragmented pieces of my life began to coalesce into a vision that was bright with promise and possibility. One evening, after a particularly grueling day of business negotiations and personal introspection, I found myself sitting in a quiet, dimly lit cafe, a steaming cup of coffee in hand. As I watched the rain tap softly against the window, I realized that I had come a long way from the despair of that fateful work dinner. I recalled the humiliation of being introduced as just a friend, the shock of discovering our savings had been misappropriated, and the overwhelming loneliness that had followed. Yet, in that reflective moment, I also saw the contours of a new future. A future where I had rebuilt my financial security, reclaimed my independence, and discovered a strength I never knew existed. I felt a quiet satisfaction and a deep sense of purpose, knowing that every struggle, every tear, had been a necessary part of my transformation. As the seasons changed, so did the narrative of my life. My business continued to grow, bolstered by innovative strategies and new partnerships that opened doors I had never thought possible. I began to see the tangible results of my efforts. My investment portfolio was steadily rising, new client contracts were being signed, and my reputation as a resilient entrepreneur was gaining traction. Each milestone was a silent victory, a statement that I had not only survived the betrayal but had thrived because of it. The financial and professional stability I had worked so hard to secure was a testament to the power of resilience. A proof that even when someone you love betrays you, you can rebuild your life and create something truly remarkable. In the midst of all these external achievements, I continued to nurture the internal transformation that had taken root deep within me. I adopted daily rituals of mindfulness and gratitude, practices that helped me stay grounded and focused on the present moment. Every morning, I took a few moments to meditate, to reflect on the journey so far, and to set an intention for the day ahead. These practices not only calmed the turbulence of my emotions but also helped me appreciate the small, everyday victories that collectively painted a picture of progress and healing. I also began to reconnect with the community around me in new, meaningful ways. I volunteered at local charities, joined support groups for people who had experienced similar betrayals, and even started hosting small gatherings where we shared stories of loss and recovery. The connections I forged during these times were deep and genuine, built on shared experiences and the unspoken understanding that the human spirit is capable of extraordinary resilience. Listening to others' stories and sharing my own, I realized that every act of vulnerability was an act of strength. The community became a wellspring of inspiration, a constant reminder that while betrayal can break you, it can also be the catalyst for rebuilding a life richer and more authentic than you ever imagined. By the time I reached this point, after months of relentless effort and introspection, I felt that the pieces of my shattered life were finally coming together to form a new mosaic, one that was defined by independence, clarity, and an unwavering belief in my own worth. I had rebuilt my financial security, re-established my career, and, most importantly, rediscovered the person I had been all along, the person who was capable, resilient, and deserving of a future filled with hope and possibility. I had turned the painful chapters of betrayal into the stepping stones of a new beginning, and every scar, every tear, now served as a badge of honor, a testament to the strength that had carried me through the darkest moments. In the final stretch of this transformative journey, I began planning for the future with a renewed sense of optimism. I set ambitious personal and professional goals, drafting a roadmap for further growth and exploration. I envisioned new ventures that aligned with my passions, and I began to invest in projects that promised not just financial returns, but also the opportunity to make a meaningful impact in the world. Every plan, every strategy session, was imbued with the knowledge that my past no longer defined me. Instead, it fueled the fire of my ambition and the certainty that my destiny was mine to shape. One crisp winter evening, as I walked along a snow-dusted street with the steady crunch of footsteps underfoot, I paused to reflect on everything that had brought me to this moment. The cold air was invigorating, and the silence of the night felt like an invitation to embrace my own thoughts fully. I recalled the heartbreak, the betrayal, and the soul-crushing moment when my wife had used our shared savings for her secret trip. But now, in that quiet reflection, those memories had transformed into a narrative of empowerment, a story of a man who had chosen himself, who had rebuilt his life piece by piece, and who now stood at the threshold of a future filled with endless promise. I realized that, ultimately, the journey of transformation is not measured solely by external achievements or financial stability, but by the quiet, unyielding courage to redefine oneself in the face of overwhelming adversity. I had learned that true empowerment comes from within, from the ability to rise after every fall, to learn from every scar, and to build a life that reflects your deepest values and ambitions. The pain of the betrayal, though it had once threatened to break me, had instead become the very force that propelled me to rediscover my worth. I had turned a moment of devastating loss into the foundation of a new beginning, a stepping stone toward a life that was authentically, unapologetically mine. As I stepped into the future, I carried with me every lesson from the past, every moment of despair, every victory, every quiet insight gained in the solitude of long, reflective nights. I knew that there would be challenges ahead, that the road to self-reclamation was ongoing and fraught with uncertainties. But I also knew that I had the inner strength, the resilience, and the unwavering conviction to face whatever came my way. I had reclaimed not only my financial independence but my sense of self, a future where I no longer depended on the approval of others to define my worth. Standing now in the soft glow of my new home, with the echoes of past betrayals behind me and the promise of tomorrow shining ahead, I felt a profound peace. I had transformed every tear and every moment of heartache into a powerful force for change. I had built a life that was a living testament to the idea that when you choose yourself, when you embrace your own potential, nothing can hold you back. The journey had been long, the scars were real, but they were also the markers of my strength. A reminder that even in the face of betrayal, the human spirit can rise, rebuild, and flourish. This is my story, a saga of betrayal transformed into empowerment, of a shattered dream rebuilt with resilience and hope, and of a future reclaimed through sheer determination and self-love. Every painful moment was a seed that blossomed into a new beginning, every setback a stepping stone to a life defined not by the failures of the past, but by the limitless possibilities of the future. And as I step boldly into tomorrow, I do so with a heart full of gratitude, a mind honed by every struggle, and an unshakable belief that my destiny is mine to create, one courageous, determined step at a time.